From bustling ancient ports to the complex global economy of today, one tool has consistently shaped trade, politics and power: the tariff. It's essentially a tax on imported goods, a border levy that sounds simple but carries a weighty history. But where did this idea begin, and how has it evolved from a basic toll to a sophisticated and often controversial instrument of national policy? While pinpointing the very first tariff is lost in the mists of antiquity, the concept of charging fees for goods crossing borders is quite ancient. Early empires understood the value of controlling trade routes. Tolls and customs duties were levied not just for revenue, but to regulate the flow of goods and assert authority. Think of it less as a complex economic policy and more as a gate fee, with people paying to enter markets. Fast forward to the birth of the United States. The fledgling nation needed funds. Freshly signed into law by President George Washington in 1789, one of the very first acts of the government was the Tariff Act. Initially modest, about 5%, its primary goal wasn't necessarily to shield American producers, but to fill the government's coffers. As one source notes, before the federal income tax arrived much later, tariffs were the government's lifeblood, accounting for up to 90% of all federal revenue between 1790 and 1860. But the purpose soon evolved. Protectionism quickly became a key driver, using tariffs to shield domestic industries from cheaper foreign competition, particularly from the industrial powerhouse of Great Britain. This ignited fierce debates. The industrialized North often favored high tariffs to protect its factories, while the agricultural South, reliant on imported goods and exporting crops, chafed under higher prices. The notorious Tariff of Abominations in 1828 pushed duties sky high, leading South Carolina to threaten nullification, a stark preview of the states' rights conflicts to come. Even Abraham Lincoln weighed in. Speaking in 1861, he drew a homely comparison. The tariff is to the government what a meal is to the family. But while this is admitted, it still becomes necessary to modify and change its operations according to new interests and new circumstances. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly from 1861 onwards, the US entered a period where tariffs generally remained high, seen as crucial for nurturing American industry. The 20th century saw dramatic swings. The devastating Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, enacted during the Great Depression, raised tariffs to historic highs on thousands of goods. Intended to protect American jobs, most economists now agree it backfired catastrophically, deepening the global depression by provoking retaliatory tariffs and strangling international trade. The ashes of the Second World War brought a realization. Extreme protectionism could be dangerous. The world saw the creation of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in 1947, later evolving into the World Trade Organization that we know today. This marked a significant shift towards trade liberalization. Nations worked assiduously to lower tariffs and other trade barriers, fostering decades of increasing global commerce. Tariffs, while still existing, became less prominent. For instance, their contribution to US federal revenue dropped to just 1 to 2% in recent decades. In today's deeply interconnected and globalized world, many argue that tariffs seem counterproductive, disrupting complex supply chains and raising prices for consumers and businesses alike. The general trend favored reducing these barriers for decades. Nevertheless, the renewed interest in tariffs as prominent strategy by the Trump administration signals a potential shift. This return to protectionistic measures carries the risk of sparking new tariff wars, which could destabilize international relations and have huge, unpredictable impacts on the global economy. From ancient tolls to modern trade wars, tariffs have remained a constant yet evolving feature of the economic landscape. They've funded nations, protected industries, sparked conflicts, and shaped the flow of goods across the world. Once the primary source of government income, they now play a more targeted, often contentious role. Their history reminds us that the balance between open trade and national interest is a perpetual negotiation, constantly being reshaped by new interests and new circumstances.